Welcome everyone. I'm glad you are joining us for today's presentation of the CURC webinar series entitled Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion in Your Program. My name is Eric Halverson. I am the Program Coordinator for the College and University Recycling Coalition, and I'll be your moderator for today's program. For those of you not familiar with CURC, the College and University Recycling Coalition is a member-based organization that works to grow collegiate recycling and waste reduction efforts by fostering technical information exchange and networking opportunities between the staff and students implementing programs on college and university campuses. Today's program is part of our free CURC webinar series, which is designed to highlight innovative campus programs and provide trends and perspectives on a broad range of operational and educational topics related to collegiate recycling and sustainable materials management. Today's program is the third webinar in our 2021 series, so welcome everybody. I would like to recognize today's webinar sponsors, Cascadia Consulting and Clean River Recycling Solutions, for their support of CURC and today's program. There will be more about these sponsors following the presentations. Now we have a few housekeeping notes to go over. If you have problems with your audio or video during the webinar, we recommend you visit support.zoom.us to troubleshoot any technical issues. And to avoid any background noise, we've placed all but our panelists' lines on mute. We encourage you to submit questions, however, by using the Q&A section of the Zoom dashboard below. We will read as many of these as possible out loud to our speakers at the end of each presentation. Also, copies of today's presentation slides will be available to download and a recording available to stream within the next day or so from the CURC website, www.curc3r.org. Now, a little over a year ago, someone responded to the CURC newsletter and was disappointed that CURC had not mentioned any of the news surrounding multiple killings of Black people, especially by police, and the repression that protesters around the country had seen since then. I'm personally grateful, and I think I can speak for the rest of the board for that message, that now is the time to change and to make changes. Based on our attendance today, I can see that many campuses and people in sustainability agree. We are very glad to welcome two schools who will share their work related to equity, justice, diversity, and inclusion. The presentations today will cover both internal organizational policies of your office, department, or institution, and working externally to educate and influence your campus as people working in sustainability or waste reduction. First, we will hear from Leticia Cavazos and Carly Werdel from Oregon State University about how their Department of Materials Management and Sustainability Office came together last year to advance justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in sustainability work on their campus. After that, we will welcome Lani from North Carolina State University to speak about integrating waste reduction messaging with anti-racism and intersectional environmentalism. And finally, after our panelists today, we will hear a very brief presentation about CURC itself as an organization and what we are doing related to justice and diversity from Leanna Hauser, the Vice Chair of the Board of Directors for CURC. Now, let us welcome our first guests from Oregon State University. Leticia Cavazos was hired as a student at the Sustainability Office in June of 2014. After earning a PhD in industrial engineering in December 2016, she transitioned to a full-time position. Her primary duties include sustainability assessment and reporting, utility data acquisition and analysis, managing the EcoReps program, sustainable purchasing and procurement, and new employee orientation. Carly Werdel is a third-year Oregon State student studying environmental policy and environmental agriculture. She has worked for the Sustainability Office for 1 year as the lead on digital marketing and outreach. After graduating, she hopes to continue advancing climate justice within sustainability work. Welcome, Oregon State.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you all for joining us today and listening to us about the work that we've been doing. And so today, Carly and I are going to be sharing the work that we have been doing and will continue to do on integrating equity into our sustainability work. And so how we started, for the past few years, we have been talking about integrating a more holistic definition of sustainability into our work, with the offices of campus recycling and the sustainability office on campus at Oregon State University. And so in the fall of 2020, we created a task force, if you will, in order to develop a set of goals and actions for advancing justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, or JEDI, in our sustainability work. And so in order to do so, we needed to have a starting point. So in this case, we took the OSU strategic plan for inclusive excellence as our starting point. And inclusive excellence is defined, at least in the strategic plan, as a recognition that an organization's success is dependent on and tied directly to how well it values, engages, and includes the rich diversity of its community members. And so we took this plan that has 5 goals, action items for each goal and metrics for each goal, and then customize it to the work that we wanted to do. And so we started off with 5 goals, we customized it to our needs. And then after we had a first draft, we reached out to more experienced partners at OSU, specifically the Office of Institutional Diversity and Community Engagement and Leadership, to get feedback from them. They've been doing this type of work for longer than we have, and we wanted to make sure that we had their perspective on how we go about developing the set of goals. And so after talking to them, we worked on our goals a little bit more, and we came up with 4. So the first one was to develop a longer-term plan. Second one, to expand internal knowledge. The third one, to expand external knowledge. And then the fourth one, to tell inclusive stories. And so I'm going to be talking about the first 2, and then Carly will talk about the last 2. So developing a long-term plan. We know that this work that we started in the fall of 2020 is not a 1 year and we're done, or a 5 year and we're done. We understand that this will have to be adapted as the world changes, and so we change with them. And so we want to set strategic priorities to develop an action plan every year. And so in order to do so, we documented core functions for our departments, for campus recycling and the sustainability office. And this is because if we want to incorporate JEDI priorities into our work, we needed to understand what were our core functions. And each of our departments came with about 25 to 30 core functions. And then after we documented these core functions, then we reviewed university-wide JEDI priorities. So going beyond just the strategic plan for inclusive excellence, we looked at other campaigns or other frameworks that have already been set at Oregon State in order to see what other priorities are there. And so we looked at the Division of Finance and Administration Framework for Success. There is a campaign called We Have Work to Do. And so we looked at what other campaigns and frameworks were out there that have already established some sort of JEDI priorities for the university. And once we had that, we hosted an internal staff vision and discussion. So this was a Zoom call with staff from the Sustainability Office and Campus Recycling. And we asked ourselves some questions, such as, ways in which our work is currently inclusive, what barriers we are facing in our work, what it would look like and feel like and even smell like if equity was embedded in our work. And so we had this discussion via Zoom. We gathered all that information. And then after we had that internal visioning discussion, then we'd reach out to stakeholders around campus to gather further input. So we reach out to academic programs, other committees, student organizations, the student clubs, the student government. And we send them a survey with some visioning and action plan questions to get their input regarding JEDI priorities in their programs. And so similarly to what we do with the internal staff visioning session, we asked questions about programs that are already inclusive, barriers that programs are facing outside of our two offices, ideas on addressing barriers, how to embed equity in programs around OSU, and also if they had any ideas on what metrics we should be using or they would like to see us using in order to check our progress in this work. And so after we gather all this input from stakeholders, then we were able to synthesize all of this information from our core functions, JEDI priorities around Oregon State, and then input from our own offices and stakeholders into strategic priorities. And this is where we are at the moment. This is strategic priorities we just synthesized this week. And you can see them here. I'm not going to go through them. But then this is going to be the starting point to develop our action plan for next year. And so the next steps will be to take a look at these strategic priorities and then see if we need to make any changes, if we need to adapt or add or just edit anything, and then start working on connecting these strategic priorities with the work that we do and moving forward and creating a plan for next year. And so this is the first goal of developing a long-term plan. So the second goal would be to expand internal knowledge. And so we recognize that we are all at different levels of learning when it comes to JEDI. Some people may be very experienced and might have a lot of experience. Some of us might not be as experienced. Some people may be in the middle. And so we wanted to create a starting point or a baseline through which we can communicate and build on the work that we do. And so in order to do so, we created a Canvas course that we named Eco-Justice Trainings. And so, and we have 3 learning outcomes. The first one was to be able to define and understand core terms related to eco-justice, be able to articulate multiple dimensions of identity in the context of power, privilege, and oppression, and reflect on our own individual dimensions of identity, and then be able to recognize historical and present inequities in the environmental impacts, programs, and movements. And so when we started talking about creating this Canvas module and this Canvas course, we had a lot of ideas. We had resources from the hiring process, retention, just basic knowledge. And again, we reach out to our partners and our colleagues in the Office of Institutional Diversity and Campus Engagement and Leadership in order to, talk to them about this. This is something that they do and, as part of their work. And we actually created, from about 6 learning outcomes that we had, we actually downsized to 3. And again, this is mostly to make sure that we are on the same level when we're talking about terms and core concepts so that we can build up on this. And also to be able to understand how we fit into all of this work. And also to understand how we can place ourselves into the work that's happening, not only within our office, but within the OSU and the nation. And so we have 3 modules with scenarios. We have a poverty simulation, and then some videos in order to get all of this. So I'm gonna pass it over to Carly for the next goal.
Yeah, thanks, Letty. So I'll be talking firstly about expanding external knowledge and then about our social media efforts. So not only did we want to expand our own personal justice knowledge, we also wanted to share information about environmental justice with the rest of the school. And so we looked into it, and it turned out that OSU did not yet have a central location for environmental justice information. So we wanted to create a web page to basically fill this role and provide that central hub of information. So we started by reviewing what other universities have done in this regard, and we were particularly inspired by Princeton's page on environmental justice. So they basically provided definitions of key terms including a holistic definition of sustainability and some other key terms like environmental racism and environmental justice. So we partially modeled the content of our own page off of what Princeton had done, but of course incorporated our own ideas and goals. And Andrea will drop the link to this webpage in the chat in case anyone would like to take a look at it. Next slide, please. So our fourth goal was with regard to social media. We really wanted to start telling more inclusive stories. So this particularly was with regard to BIPOC people who are engaged in sustainability work. We really wanted to counter the narrative that sustainability and environmentalism is only for white people. And we also wanted to help clarify the connection between social justice and sustainability. So our first action was to increase the number of social media posts with an explicit connection to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and to write all of our posts with a holistic definition of sustainability in mind. We also really began to seek out BIPOC alumni who are engaged with sustainability or eco-justice, and then we interviewed them for our alumni profiles project. So our metric for social media posts, or next slide, please. Our metric for these social media posts is to make 4 posts per month or 25% of posts per month that are related to JEDI. And in order to ensure that we are actually maintaining this metric, we have been tracking these posts for the past year. So the red line on this graph shows the total quantity of JEDI posts each month, and the purple line shows the percentage of the total. So as you can see, there have been some ups and downs. We were pretty consistently meeting our goal in January, February, and March of this year, but we did not meet our goal in April or May. But that's actually exactly why we're tracking this data, so that we can see that we're not meeting this goal and then ask ourselves, what can we do in the month of June to make sure that we do meet this goal? So for the past couple of weeks, we've kind of been working a little bit extra hard to make sure that we're posting more JEDI content. And ideally, once we get to the point where we're more consistently meeting this goal, we will raise our metric so that it becomes challenging again. Next slide, please. So these are the criteria that I use to determine if a post counts as like a JEDI post, since this can be pretty subjective. I'm not going to go through this in detail because these slides will be available later for anyone to see. But the punchline is basically that I only count it for this metric if it's pretty explicitly related to JEDI. And if it's not explicit, I err on the side of not counting it just because there's always room for improvement. But yeah, that's all we have to share for you for now, and we'll open it up to the audience for some questions.
All right, everybody, this is a reminder. If you want to submit a question, you can use the Q&A section at the dashboard at the bottom of your screen when you're on Zoom, and we will get to any of those that come in. I have a question to start you off with. You mentioned that you wanted to align your office's goals with the schools in general. Now, where is Oregon State University as a whole in that process? Do they have a guiding document already for, justice and diversity?
I think the closest would be the strategic plan for inclusive excellence. There isn't one that specifically is labeled as justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Several different frameworks from divisions and other units have maybe a goal into those frameworks, but there isn't one that's specifically like a JEDI framework for university-wide purposes.
Absolutely. Was it difficult to place your office in relation to that larger strategic plan that Oregon State has?
I think to a certain extent it was. This is the first time that we had taken something like this and really tried to tailor it to our needs. However, the Office of Institutional Diversity has been a great resource. They part of their core functions is to help units and departments like us incorporate all of this into our strategic plan, into our day-to-day. And so yes, it was challenging, but we also had a lot of resources on campus that we could talk to.
Absolutely. For the eco-justice modules, those resources that you mentioned before, who exactly is taking those, and are they required for people in your offices?
Yes, so for this like introductory Canvas course is anyone in our office. So for the first round, so we have some iteration in terms of understanding what was helpful and useful for everyone in our office. So we ask, for example, in our sustainability office, we ask every staff member, so whether it was full-time employee or student employee, to take them. And so moving forward, anyone that we hire will have to take this course. Whether, again, it's tailored to students, but because most of our offices are most of the members of our office are students. But yeah.
Absolutely. How was the process of getting people to advise on the quality of your plan, not only internally by getting diversity within your offices, but also across campus, making sure that you had a lot of input from a lot of diverse groups or people and identities on your campus? Was that difficult? And did you have any barriers or setbacks in getting that input?
Oh, I'm going to ask Andrea if she would like to answer that, because she was the lead person on sending out the survey and creating it.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I think that we so far are not where we need to be in regards to sort of building authentic relationships with and close working relationships with other organizations and individuals on our campus who hold identities that are currently underrepresented in OSU sustainability work. And that actually is one of our strategic priorities moving forward. And I think that the stakeholder survey we did was the step that is most meant to target what you're asking about. But I felt that, and I was the one who did the background work on that, and I felt that it was not enough. So, I mean, my suggestion would be to other schools would be to, if you aren't already, would be to try to find more personal and in-depth ways to have discussion around those questions rather than a survey. So I think we were kind of trying to just make some moves at all in the work. And so we were, I think, feeling eager to get some underlying work done so that we'd feel like we had a decent level of confidence to start moving from contemplation to action next year in a bigger way. But that I'm expecting that that's going to be an ongoing process that we're going to need to continue to develop within. I'm not sure if I fully answered your question though, did I?
No, yeah, I think that is true for many offices. That does answer my question about trying to make connections with people in different ways that are authentic, especially from the beginning, placing the process maybe over the product in some cases,
Yeah, and our strategic priority on that, we're figuring it's going to be on a scale. There's going to be like the most shallow involvement, which is like doing stakeholder surveys, hosting listening sessions, to more deep involvement, which is like co-creation of services and programs and like true collaboration where we are sharing and delegating work to one another, to like the opposite side of the scale, which is essentially we support the work of people who are external to our departments, who are engaged in the work, and just figure out what are the means of support that we may be able to provide that would help them succeed if they need it. So.
Absolutely. I was curious about your social media projects and those platforms. Somebody asked where you might find examples of those, but I believe you sent the platforms for your office in the chat, right? Yeah, so I would encourage those who want to see examples to look on those different profiles. You can see some of the things that they have been working on, that they have been sharing. People are curious if you, like, who are the people doing the this social media work, especially interviewing past alumni, and how did you make those connections with those people?
Yeah, I can answer that one. I've been doing most of those interviews, and I've only actually done 2 so far because they are like a decent amount of work to coordinate them and interview them and write up an article about it. But I found, so OSU has 7 cultural resource centers, and what I did to identify these alumni is I just directly emailed the heads of the cultural resource centers and told them that I was looking to interview BIPOC alumni who are engaged in sustainability or environmental justice work, and asked if they knew of any people that might be interested in being interviewed. And they sent me like 20 names and contact information. So I have more than enough contact information to last a little while. So yeah, it was actually pretty easy. And most of the people that I reached out to were really excited to be interviewed. So.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Well, we are going to pause the questions for Oregon State there so we can move on to our next presentation. Next, we will welcome Lani St. Hill from North Carolina State University. Lani is NC State University's Waste Reduction and Recycling Outreach Coordinator. She works with students, staff, and faculty to develop, implement, and promote waste diversion programs such as the Zero Waste Wolf Pack at Carter Finley Stadium and the Zero Waste Wolves student organization. Lani is also pursuing her master's degree in climate justice from NC State. Welcome, Lani.
Thank you so much. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. So yes, hello everybody. My name is Lani St. Hill and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the outreach coordinator, as you just heard. And my job is to lead our campus to zero waste through education and outreach. But as most of us know, recycling alone will not save our planet, and it will not save the communities that we live in and the people. And so I hope with this presentation, I'm going to give you an idea on how I discuss some big, sometimes uncomfortable, but really obvious social justice issues as part of my zero waste work. And while I do work with everyone on campus, today I am focusing on my interactions with students. So let me tell you a little bit about NC State University. We're located here in Raleigh. It's basically a small city and we operate like one. Our department, Waste Reduction and Recycling, is the campus waste hauler. So we own and operate our own fleet of trucks. We even have our own on-site compost facility so we can close the loop on food waste management. And I love our university. I love the work that we do to solve global challenges and make our community and our planet great. But this work would not be possible without our being a land-grant university. And the amazing work that we do today is being continually paid for by land that was taken from Indigenous people. And not just here in North Carolina. We sit on land that was once stewarded by the people of the Tuscarora and the Catawba tribes, but also because of land that was taken from Indigenous people from across the country, including Minnesota. Additionally, this land has borne witness to over 400 years of enslavement, torture, systemic mistreatment of African people and their descendants. And so I recognize them today in order to break the cycle of colonization and the continued erasure of Indigenous and Black people. And I also share this with you today to help impart the true message and the true part of all of my work, and that is everything is connected. The land that we hold space on now, our zero waste work, all of our students, we're connected. And so this is both my personal and cultural ethos as Kanaka Maoli, Indigenous Hawaiian. And this is why I do the work that I do. I want our students in our campus community to understand that we're connected. And then they can see how their actions matter, their decisions matter, their lives matter, and that they have the power to make a difference. And that is why step one for me about incorporating anti-racism and intersectional environmentalism into my work is about acknowledgement. To paraphrase Ibram X. Kendi, the opposite of racist isn't not racist, it's anti-racist. Anti-racism is an action in which we actively confront racism and systems of oppression. When we communicate this to our students, we're telling them that we see them, that we believe them, and that we support them. We may not always have the words, and that's okay, because you don't need to recreate this content. A lot of it already exists. For example, the land acknowledgement that I shared with you just now was written by an NC State staff member and Lumbee tribe member to be used for staff and to be used by the university. And so, what are resonating messages that are coming from your schools, your chancellors, the various colleges and departments on your campus, your OIED or GLBT or African American student centers? Share this information on your socials. Follow these accounts, and not just ones run by your institution, but also ones that are run by your student organizations. Comment and like on their posts and socials. Also, be involved in person. And I know that's been hard this past year, but you can be involved, show up, attend events by people who are doing this work on your campus. Support the students and their work. And it's not just about providing waste management. It's about supporting them through promotion and participation. And most importantly, listen and learn. Because this is what will truly help you. It's helped me continue to understand more deeply and be able to see those connections more clearly. We also must acknowledge the truth of our own work. For example, here at NC State, I message a lot about reducing our waste through just say no to plastic bags and just say no to that printed receipt. And this messaging, it's a direct link to my job description, but it's not a universal message depending on the identities that you hold. And it also speaks to the privilege that many of us hold, myself included. I can make a purchase. I can put it in my reusable bag or not even use a bag. I can say no to the receipt and I can walk out of a store, no problem. Others cannot, including my husband and my son, who are both Black men. And I did not really realize this until my son came to the age when he was able to go into stores by himself and, make a purchase on his own. And my husband was adamant that he always get the store's plastic bag and he always get the receipt, even if he was just buying a pack of gum. And when he said those words, it clicked. I saw my privilege. And I share this truth with you, as well as with my students, when we begin discussing waste reduction strategies, that sometimes we have to say it out loud for it to click for other people. And that message is that we don't all have the same experiences and interactions. And therefore, our programs are not universal. So a large part of what we do is to build knowledge. We want our students to understand waste, what it is, what bin does it go in, what happens to it, how to reduce it. And I know for many of us, a really fun activity is a waste audit. I love waste audits, where students can really get their hands on waste and see the impact. This past year, we pivoted away from campus buildings and waste audits to hosting virtual personal waste audits. This type of activity helped the students learn not just what goes where, their landfill, recycling, what's compostable, but it also allowed us to have some really great discussions on why do they have what they have? Why did they buy what they bought? How did they get it? Do they have transportation? Do they use a bus or a bike? Do they have access to grocery stores? Do they live in a food desert? Can they recycle where they live? And surprisingly, majority of them do not have access to recycling, even within the city of Raleigh. Can they compost? Do they pay for a composting service? Do they live in a house that has a backyard where they could compost at home? And so these activities were a bridgeway and to help your students better understand waste. It's not just about the diversion rates, but really how their identities and their peers' identities determine our interactions with why we have what we have and what we can do with it, and what are the strategies to reducing our waste. So we also build our knowledge, as you know, through a lot of presentations. And I'm sure we all discussed that linear versus circular economies and cradle to grave design theories. But these discussions also provide you an opportunity to dig deeper, to help them see the connection between the fossil fuel and plastic industries and environmental racism and injustices that exist. And I am not an expert, but it is amazing that we all work at universities where there are experts. So featured is Dr. Ryan Emanuel and Dr. Louis Rivers, and they actually just released a new nationwide analysis that shows that counties with higher social vulnerability are home to a denser web of natural gas pipelines. So another way that we can integrate JEDI into our work is actually connecting your students with experts on your campus. And it's also important to build their knowledge about the land where they work and study, where they are. North Carolina is often called the birthplace of the environmental justice movement because of the PCB protests that occurred in 1982. And many students don't know about the history, even if they grew up in North Carolina. It is not being taught. And so I ask you, what can you share about your school and about your state? And it's not just what happened centuries, decades, or years ago, but it's also about what is happening now in your area. So building knowledge, again, is more than just having your students understand waste diversion rates. We want them to be data-driven, yes, to find those solutions. But we want them also to dig deeper, to connect to their personal experiences with those of their peers, and to connect with the faculty and research that is going on your campus, as well as the local knowledge about their history and the current environment. Here at NC State, our motto is Think and Do. And so we've discussed having students involved with this learning process and building their knowledge. But what are other ways that we can actively engage with our students in order to promote and support anti-racism and social justice? If you looked at my job description, these are some responsibilities, just a few of them that I oversee, and that's our social media at NC State Recycles. I hire and work with student interns every year. I'm the advisor to a student organization, and I also oversee our volunteer programs. And so briefly how to get this in, I love that Oregon brought up their social media because I think that is an excellent way to acknowledge and build knowledge and engage with people. And again, we want to share and promote work. Share and promote the work of your students, of faculty, of the student centers about what's going on in your campus. And I use social media a lot because this is where our students are, right? We're meeting them where they operate. And it's also a really great informal connection to put a face to who you are. You could join me every Wednesday for a Waste Education Wednesday, and we have those featured on our IGTV, and that content is evergreen. And I think this is really important because it provides a way, if you are talking about really important, serious stuff, anti-racism work, and it's in a presentation, only the people who are attending it hear it and see it and know it. And then it's done. But when it's on your social media or your website, that way it can live forever. And so people can always see it and access it if they would like. Internships also provide a wonderful peer-to-peer educational opportunity for a campus, but they also provide a really great stepping stone for students to learn and grow their careers. And we're not just hiring for now, but we're playing a role in the future of waste management, right? And so I ask, think about where you are posting your positions. What networks do you share your hiring notices with, even with students? And are you offering them a professional experience? Because we know that there is a green ceiling in our industry. And research has indicated that we often receive a lot of really diverse and smart talent into our internship pipelines, but we don't nurture them enough to go through the entire organization. So what can you do to support your interns while they're working for you now and also beyond the role with your office? And I always say, model what you want to be seen in your own life. Think about what you're paying. Think about the flexibility schedules. Think about the continued education opportunities for your interns. And then, of course, work and support the student organizations on your campus. Your role may be as an advisor, or you just may be a resource, but find ways to collaborate with all of them. Because when you begin to see that we are all connected, trust me, no matter your role as a recycling or sustainability coordinator, you are connecting directly to their mission. So use your position to support the groups on your campus, connect with them, also connect them with access to funding, to job openings, to events, to even news or papers that you come across that are applicable to them. And talk with everyone. The more that I expand my circle, the more I learn and the more I can showcase and highlight the connections that we have with one another. And this is a really vital step because my programs rely on volunteers. Our Zero Waste Wolfpack program with NC State Athletics is run by my student interns, and it takes roughly 225 plus volunteers per season. I host another 200 plus students for other projects during the year. Now, I believe in the work our volunteers do. It's experiential learning in a really fun environment in which our volunteers get to engage with our fans and community members and talk about composting and recycling. But more than that, they get to talk about their clubs and what they study and why they're there. And so it's not just about the student experience, it's about the community's interaction with the students. They get to interact with people who sometimes look like they do and sometimes don't. And so when you reach out and you include people, you are showing again that we are all connected. We're connected through the waste that we generate. We're connected to our campus. We're connected to athletics, go Pack, but we're connected to one another. And step 4, final one, advocacy. So what I've been talking about so far in acknowledging and recognizing colonization and white supremacy in our lives and institutions, building this knowledge about how these systems interact with our work in zero waste messaging and how we can learn and support one another within these systems through engagement. This all lives at the heart of this kind of basic model of sustainability, people, planet, profit. And this is what this term of intersectional environmentalism is about. It's intersectional because it speaks to how we all carry and live very different identities, which come with their own privileges as well as obstacles. and that affects how we interact with everything. And that can feel overwhelming because it's a lot, but it also should be really comforting because that means that we all have a role to play. And we don't have to be experts, but we can be scientists and artists, dancers, engineers, dreamers, writers. For me, intersectional environmentalism speaks to finding those diverse solutions to the problems that we face that are as multifaceted and complex as we are. And so that means that by protecting people, we can simultaneously protect the planet. And that means there's just not one way. It allows our students to see how they can influence, inspire, and implement real change. A truth about NC State is that the majority of all of our zero waste programs on our campus began because of students, their ideas, their advocacy, their work. And so I like to use the 4 levels of action that I learned from Will Grant. I think he's an East Coast Oregon guy. And I heard it from Project Drawdown, and it was featured in that a webinar that I saw. But basically, there are these levels of participation and action that we each can do. And it's a linear progression, and it helps students to see how they can magnify work and move beyond just bringing my bottle, but how they can impact their friends and family, their school and their campuses, and then of course, policy. Learn more about that. You can Google it. But in summary, I believe that these 4 keys can really help everyone integrate anti-racism and intersectional environmentalism into your waste reduction work. And it's important that you connect with what matters, and this matters. It always had, but it's at a forefront of what's going on now in our country and on our campuses. But also be authentic. And by that, I mean, be authentic in your interest. Be authentic in knowing that we're at the place you are, right? And that is okay. Dig deeper into what you're already doing to showcase the connection. Everything that we do can connect to this work, but sometimes we just have to say it out loud and really begin the conversations to talk about it. Support students, their dreams, because honestly, they have the solutions, the answers are there. And then of course, showcase the ways that they can impact the campus, the planet, and their communities, and just be that springboard for them. Our mission at NC State is to promote an integrated approach to problem solving that transforms lives, and it provides leadership for social, economic, and technological development across North Carolina and around the world. But in order to transform lives, we need to save them and actively work against systems of racism, oppression, and violence. So to make this clear, silence is compliance. So we need to be actively anti-racist. And it will take all of us. And it may get uncomfortable, but the solutions are possible because many paths will lead us to success if we're open and mindful to an intersectional approach. And thank you. That's my contact information, but it'll be shared with you. So I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Lani. Thank you for naming all those things, all those systems of violence that have led to the system that we are living in today, and the importance of naming that, not only to name them, but to further add the importance and urgency of what zero waste is. We have a couple questions. The first one is, you mentioned supporting and recruiting diverse student interns, people who are working in your programs and volunteering at your events. Do you also work with those people who are doing the waste hauling and recycling on your campus? For people who have diverse groups like those on their campuses, how do you make sure those voices are supported and included in your office's policies? You're on mute, Lani.
Sorry. We're the waste haulers. So when you talk about, do I work with them?
Yeah,
We are
like,
them.
or if your office, how does your office like support those people?
So I think it's primarily we continually have, there's a big push of diversity and of course payment and looking at who we hire, why we hire the way we do. I think every institution will say there's a lot of room to grow in this, but there's really good people, you know, and we listen to them and we continually feel that they have the real knowledge. And so how can we help them share that knowledge with everybody and being a platform? I work a lot with like our facilities housekeeping teams, and it's always about giving them the ability to be the person, to be in control, to tell us what to do, because they know what's best. They see it in action. And so allowing them to have that power, I think is one of the best ways that you can do, best things that you can do outside of, obviously, there's pay, flexibility, all of these really big HR issues that sometimes are out of your personal control, but you all have influence. We all have influence and ways to kind of advocate and push for it, which is going on now on our campus. So.
Absolutely. And the waste audit idea, I think people really were interested in those personal waste audits that are not only about what you're consuming, but why you're consuming it. How did you get those to happen during COVID? And there's one other part of the question. What did you find from those waste audits?
Sure. So we traditionally do 4 to 5 campus waste audits every year. And these are big building waste audits, like 500 to 700 pounds per audit. And that's always been a great way to engage with students about waste diversion and what it looks like on a campus. Because of COVID, all of our events, in-person events, were canceled. And so we were trying to think, we really want students to see their personal impact, like, you know, like they still are creating waste, it's still impacting the planet. But because it was more of this personal take and we had the opportunity, so came up with this, you know, a Google, we can talk a lot more about this another time, but it allowed us in a Zoom session to then dig into their personal stuff. You know, I saw all their data from the individual Google form that they submitted. So I had all of their data and then we could talk about it. And that's when we had this big conversation within a Zoom meeting like this. So it's virtual, but it was wonderful. And I wouldn't have never done it had we not been in the situation we were in. So that is a very nice silver lining of the situation, because I think it's something that I'll continue to do, because it did allow for a lot more discussion from that personal side and connecting it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lani. We are running short on time, so we're going to move on. And people were asking about contact information. These presentations and contact information will be on the CURC website, so you can check those out at curc3r.org. Now I'm going to invite our vice chair to speak on what CURC has been up to in this area. So Leanna, do you want to share your screen?
Yes, I will do that right now. And I'm going to be really brief because we have very little time. So thank you, everyone. All of your presentations were incredibly enlightening, and I'm really excited to continue work with all of you and everyone on this panel. So we made a statement last year, and we just wanted to sort of speak to the work that we committed to doing since it's been just about a year since we made this solidarity statement with Black Lives Matter. So really quickly, some of the high level things that we've been working on is we did form a JEDI committee. We passed a resolution in our bylaws to add a JEDI committee to the CURC board, and added a JEDI chair to the executive committee. We have the JEDI committee looks at inward and outward exploration on how to integrate JEDI into CURC's board. on the platforms that we have, like this webinar series and our newsletters, the people, either both our board of directors and our members and our constituents, and then in our procedures and programs through things like our bylaws and other ways that we operate. The next really big thing that we have committed to doing is a self-assessment. We've hired 122 Consulting to guide us in an organizational inclusivity excellence assessment. So we're looking at our governance, we're looking at our policies, we're looking at our culture and climate. So our board members are currently completing this assessment. We'll send it back to 122 Consulting. They'll give us recommendations, and then by early August, we expect to be able to have a final review of those recommendations and begin implementation on all of the levels of how CURC is involved, either internally and externally, and how it relates to how we can better integrate JEDI into that work. We've also done some changes, made some changes to our board of directors selection process, and a lot of that has been language, and a lot of this did come out of the survey that we did last fall. And we just changed language from, nominations to applications, just to changing that we didn't need any previous board experience, changing languages about job titles that were much more broadly inclusive. And we saw a tremendous increase in the number of board applications and the diversity of schools and the titles and the positions that people hold. So we're really excited about announcing our new slate of directors very soon. And then lastly, we just some of our next steps are, again, to review the self-assessment with 122 Consulting and begin to implement those recommendations. Assess the effectiveness of our new webinar process, which we've sent out. We are accepting proposals and reviewing those proposals based on different demographics of our schools to represent the diversity of our schools and our members. And then I'll obviously continue self-reflection, receive member feedback, and actively pursue inclusivity in the makeup of our board, our membership, and our work. And I'll just mention that if you have any questions or comments, or if you would like to join the JEDI committee, we have about 22 members. We meet monthly. So any questions or comments, or if you would like to join that committee, please contact us at the CURC3R@gmail. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanna. Now, some final message I want to share with everyone. We are so excited to continue our webinar series for 2021 with the topics that you can see in front of you. In an effort to make sure that a diversity of our members is represented in the webinars, we've created a form that you can submit a proposal to speak on the webinar. So there are still open speaking spots for each of these. We haven't finalized speakers for all of them, but especially if you're interested in August, please submit a form as soon as possible so that we can make sure we select some great people to present. That form is available on our website and will be in the post-webinar survey you will receive right after this program is completed. I wanted to share some messages from our sponsors for today. Cascadia Consulting Group is a small woman-owned sustainability consulting firm headquartered in Seattle, Washington, and with offices in Oakland, California. Their team of 60 professionals provide services across a range of sustainability areas, from spearheading innovative zero waste and circular economy initiatives with campuses, cities, and leading companies, to providing cross-utility technical assistance and engagement to business and residential audiences and developing climate action plans for cities, companies, and institutions globally. Cascadia has provided sustainability services to a range of higher ed campuses across the country, which is reflected on the slide. Their mission is to inspire and empower communities everywhere and to restore our world. Cascadia is committed to advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion within the environmental field, and so is excited to sponsor this webinar. Thank you to our other sponsor, Clean River Recycling Solutions. Connect and collect with the new Lean Stream. It's an effective waste and recycling system that's high on impact and low on cost. Designed by Clean River's industry experts, the Lean Stream is versatile and compact with the same easy to use, high quality functions and features of more expensive waste stream products. The Lean Stream easily adapts to your campus needs, whether you're looking to start or supplement a recycling program. Recycling is smart for your campus, but the new Lean Stream makes it simple. Clean River Recycling Solutions has been a leading manufacturer of recycling bins for the past 30 years. Creating less waste is their passion. Creating effective recycling bin programs that work is their purpose. Their innovative, flexible, and customizable recycling products are constantly evolving with the industry to meet any environmental, programmatic, and legislative changes. Their bins are made from the highest possible recycled content, are specifically customized to collect dirt and divert waste from any institutional, recreational, or business setting. And Clean River is excited and passionate to partner with you to create a robust and effective recycling program that encompasses sustainability and allows you to achieve your waste diversion goals. Now, once you leave the webinar today, you will be prompted to take a very quick survey about your experience with the presentation today. Please share your thoughts with us so we can improve our webinars moving forward. And don't forget to submit interest forms if you're interested in sharing on webinars in the future. So one last time, join me in thanking Letty, Carly, and Lani for their presentations and their hard work. Look for their presentations and a recording of the program if you want to revisit it or share with other people on our CURC website, www.curc3r.org, within the next day or so. So have a good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for letting us go a little bit over, but thank you for joining us.